This is the No Strings Podcast with Rel Simon.
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs?
And that quick snippet of voice you heard after the intro was that of head coach Jim Mora, coach of the redacted team, the team that is trash, that I will not speak of vocally pronounce on my podcast, that trash NFL team. But his epic rant when asked about his team's chances to make the playoffs, and it's playoffs. This is No Strings Podcast, episode 55, being recorded on a random rainy old Tuesday. You might hear some mouse clicking, you may hear some paper shuffling, and me just trying to get myself here together because I have a lot of articles to read and react to. I usually like to record on a weekend when I have some space, but I wanted to get this out. And Sundays during this time of year are for church and football. There's been a lot going on. So, No Strings Pod, welcome in episode 55. And the episode is titled Playoffs. If you see it on the social media or TikTok or in print form, or if you look at the episode title as you're listening to this, the P is in brackets or parentheses. And that's just a play on words. Whereas the main reason for this podcast today is to talk about the mass layoffs in different sectors, different companies. So there is a little bit of sports. And I think the play on word is that, hey, when you do get laid off from a job, or when you're applying for a job, even before you even get laid off, it's almost like a tournament. May the best man or woman win to win the ultimate prize of being hired for that job. It's not necessarily being pit against each other, bracket style, round by round, as a traditional playoff. But y'all get it. I like to be creative with the titles and everything like that. So instead of what you heard earlier with Jim Moore saying playoffs, maybe we just restylize it to layoffs, right? And maybe that's the reaction you would have if you got laid off or if you know someone that got laid off. And that's how I will start the pod asking, have you ever been laid off from a job before? Me, thankfully, I have not been laid off from a job. But the only thing similar that occurred to me was a government shutdown occurring 5 years ago, during which I still worked, but with no immediate pay. My pay was delayed, back pay, however you want to frame it. But I am curious, granted, if you have any feedback for this episode about how you reacted, survived, and bounced back from that layoff. Now, we know no one ever wants that dreaded letter, email, or phone call. Layoffs completely derail your livelihood, your financial plan, your other routines. You may have packed up on living on the East Coast, moved over to the West Coast for a tech job, and then all of a sudden you get laid off and you end up having to work it in and out just to make ends meet for a little while. So we're going to get into it. I'm going to read and react to a few articles that I've printed out, looked at, go through a little bit of data. You may hear some numbers because, again, just like I mentioned in my last episode dedicated to numbers, numbers are key when it comes to things like this, unemployment rate, inflation, right? Everything is all surrounded about numbers. I might as well be a mathematician at this point for real, but I don't know. All right, so I Googled the latest unemployment rate, and from what Google provided me from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the unemployment rate as of August 2024 is at 4.2%. Total unemployed people, 7.1 million people. Unemployment insurance claims, 1.9 million. So out of that 7.1 million, with the 1.9 million claiming unemployment insurance, that equates to only a 26% rate of persons who are claiming unemployment. And you could get fired from a job. You may not have been successful after a few years in terms of getting a job. But one of the more alarming things lately has been the mass round of layoffs in very popular companies that we'll get to in a second, including in the tech sector. You know how tech is. Tech is high-paying jobs and innovative computers, everything, right? But we're going to dive into that in a second. So first article, a comprehensive list of 2024 tech layoffs. This is from TechCrunch.com, posted September 17th, 2024. The tech layoff wave is still going strong in 2024. Following significant workforce reductions in 2022, I've already seen 60,000 job cuts across 254 companies, according to independent layoffs tracker. Did I cut the page off on this thing? I surely did. It's all good. By tracking these layoffs, we're able to understand the impact on innovation across companies. And so on the article, they go month by month since the beginning of the year in terms of employees who have been laid off from tech-style jobs. And we're talking about companies such as Cisco, Microsoft, Nori, Bending Spoons, Apple, Amazon, right? So a lot of Google, so a lot of similar and familiar names. And so according to TechCrunch, in January 2024, 34,107 employees were laid off. February, 15,639. March, 7,403. April, 22,423. May, 11,011 employees. June, 10,083. July, 9,051. August, 26,024 employees laid off. And that's only tech. That's just tech. Let's briefly jump into Google. This is a CNBC article posted way back in May 1st, 2024. Google lays off hundreds of core employees, moves some positions to India and Mexico. Just ahead of its blowout first quarter earnings report on April 25th, Google laid off at least 200 employees from its quote-unquote core teams in a reorganization that will include moving some roles to India and Mexico, CNBC has learned. The core unit is responsible for building the technical foundation behind the company's flagship products and for protecting users' online safety, according to Google's website. Core teams include key technical units from information technology, its Python developer team, technical infrastructure, security foundation, app platforms, core developers, and various engineering roles. At least 50 of the positions eliminated were in engineering at the company's offices in Sunnyvale, California, filing show. Many core teams will hire corresponding roles in Mexico and India, according to internal documents viewed by CNBC. Let's go from Google over to Dell. And this article is from CRN, The Channel Co., September 11, 2024. Dell to carry out continued job cuts through end of the year. Throughout fiscal 2025, we remain committed to disciplined cost management. We anticipate these actions will result in a continued reduction in our overall headcount, the company stated in a quarterly business filing with the SEC, which is a Securities and Exchange Commission. Layoffs at Dell Technologies are expected to be an ongoing part of business, with more cuts expected before the end of the year as it seeks more disciplined cost management to prepare for the future. Disciplined cost management was in quotes. The Round Rock, Texas-based tech giant stated in a regulatory filing that in the first half of this fiscal year ended August 2nd, it had paid severance costs of $400 million. It said the dollar figure is identical to the workforce reduction costs it paid during the entire previous year when it eliminated 13,000 jobs during 2 layoff announcements in February 2023 and August 2023. Throughout fiscal 2025, we can remain committed to disciplined cost management and coordination with our ongoing business transformation initiatives, and we'll continue to take certain measures to reduce costs, including limitation of external hiring, employee reorganizations, and other actions to align our investments with our strategic priorities and customer needs. A rep from Dell stated. Now, we know Amazon and Apple have also had their own particular moves. I will highlight 2 more articles away from tech. This first one is from UPS. We all know about UPS, United Parcel Service. If they're not delivering, FedEx is delivering, or DHL is delivering, or the U.S. Post Office is delivering your package. So Kelly Yamanuchi from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution penned this article on September 15th, titled UPS is laying off more employees amid effort to boost profitability. The company did not, UPS is laying off more of its employees after earlier this year announcing it was cutting tens of thousands of jobs in its management ranks. The company did not specify how many employees are losing their jobs in the latest round of cuts, but said Monday evening the layoffs are part of ongoing efforts since the January announcement of reductions. It was not clear which departments were affected and how many of the cuts might be in the Atlanta area. Quote, earlier this year, we announced efforts to align the size of our management staff with the size of our company, end quote, a UPS spokesperson said in a written statement Monday. Quote, we continue to look for ways to increase productivity through process improvements, technology advancements, and organization realignment, end quote. UPS has about 500,000 employees, but has had declines in business from peaks seen during the COVID-19 pandemic, when stay-at-home protocols drove explosive growth in online shopping and deliveries to doorsteps. The job cuts come in force after the company reported earlier this year that it saw declines in volume, revenue, and operating profit in all of its business segments for 2023, which UPS CEO Carol Tomé called, quote-unquote, a difficult and disappointing year. Things have not improved according to the most recent quarterly results. In July, UPS reported a decline in operating profit for the first half of 2024 compared with 2023. That includes a second quarter with a 32% year-over-year decline in net income and a 1.1% decline in total revenue, while operating expenses grew 3.1%. And this last article is from the Seattle Times, and they talk about Boeing's recent layoffs. And if you all don't know who Boeing is an aerospace company that develops, manufactures, and services commercial airplanes, defense products, and space systems. So things around the Air and Space Center. Most of the time, you know Boeing from when you go to the airport and you get ready to get onto a plane. Delta, Southwest, United, whatever carrier, you name it. But from this article from the Seattle Times, it's posted September 16th. Boeing layoffs begin with more ahead to cut costs during machinist strike. Boeing on Monday announced internally a series of sweeping cost-cutting moves in response to the machinist strike, said it may temporarily lay off some employees, including managers and executives. According to 3 sources, the layoffs duly began Monday afternoon when Boeing laid off dozens of engineering contractors, mostly experienced retirees who have returned to help Boeing fix problems on airplanes under development. The cost-cutting measures also include significant holds on taking aircraft parts from suppliers, an action that will ripple through smaller aerospace firms around the region. In a message to employees, CFO, Chief Financial Officer Brian West said that Boeing is, quote unquote, considering the difficult step of temporary furloughs for many employees, managers, and executives in the coming weeks. By the end of last quarter, drastically lowered production rates this year have raised Boeing's accumulated net debt to $45 billion. Of that, $12 billion is due to be repaid within 2 years. The other cost-cutting steps Boeing announced include a hiring freeze, a hold on manager and executive pay increases from promotions, stopping all employee travel that's not critical, no first or business class air travel for employees, suspending all outside consulting work, no catered meals and food services at Boeing facilities except for customers, suspending charitable donations, pausing all advertising and marketing expenditures, suspending all non-essential spending on new equipment and facilities. If you would like a recap of the news, don't be afraid to be kind and rewind. I'll take a pause for the cause, and when I come back, I'll react to all of these articles and provide a little bit more context. So I'll catch you on the other side. All right, welcome back, y'all. Episode 55, titled Playoffs or Layoffs, however you see it. So before the break, we looked at a bunch of different companies, how different companies are laying off, their strategies, the recency in the news, their whole plans in terms of how they plan to lay off. You do see that more and more people are posting on TikTok how they got laid off from their tech jobs and what they've been doing lately to survive. And with tech specifically, the shift to AI and outsourcing labor internationally has created instability for a once thriving sector of the workforce. It's so scary to think that a company will consider computers, AI, and algorithms over a human to fill a specific role just to save profit. You look at the retail sector, Target, Walmart, CVS, self-checkout lanes have eliminated the need for a lot of staff on that end. Giant, Safeway, right? Even McDonald's, right, with the kiosk and everything. I did an episode a while ago about organized retail crime, but we do know that ORC has forced some companies to reverse their position on self-checkout, having to actually staff people, because some people can kind of get away with not scanning everything at the self-checkout counter. But regardless, the self-checkout lane or each self-checkout lane eliminates a cashier paid position. Cashier, customer service, whatever you call it, or whatever you would call it in that specific job or in that specific store. And also a machine, right? It doesn't use paid time off. It doesn't call out, and it's always operational unless it does need a repair or a software upgrade. It's also not on a retirement plan. So all of these are cost-cutting measures just with that, right? one person on a full-time job, one person full-time employee, just on that one thing, as the sirens go off on a Tuesday. Just that one position. There's so many different things. Taxes, PTO, retirement, health plan, depending on the position. But going back to these different articles, there's just a lot of distress and chaos right now. And the Fed just lowered the interest rate by 0.5 basis points just last week. And you see how from all these different companies, how they are in different ways implementing in layoffs. If we look at Google, so they'll lay off a lot of positions in America, and instead move some positions or outsource to other places such as India and Mexico. You look at Dell with their continued job cuts. They're doing chunks of layoffs, but it's going to be steady layoffs throughout the year, according to them, right? If we look at UPS, the thing about UPS is that they want to boost profitability so much. We know that during the holiday season is really when things pick up with packages and everything. But did we not last year have a strike, a union strike with UPS, FedEx, just these carriers for better rights, vehicles? I know Amazon is upgrading their fleet, but did they not agree last year to a massive deal? Try to see if I can pull it up here. UPS workers, 2023. Yeah, UPS workers, they went on strike. Okay, got it. On August 22nd, 2023, 86% of UPS workers voted to ratify a new 5-year collective bargaining agreement in which they made significant gains on a wide array of their most pressing issues. And granted, a lot of those issues were, of course, like the safety, the vehicles, the fleet, and, of course, the salary. And that's one thing that's about it, where you can be on the picket line and you can strike so much, just like we see here with Boeing during the machinist strike. And they are doing different tactics such as cutting back on benefits, not implementing any new hires right now, doing all they can to try and hold the ship steady. And I mean, I watch a few YouTube channels and it's interesting. So yeah, UPS, you went on strike, you went through a deal and agreed on a deal last year. And now UPS is laying off employees. What does that tell us? That tells us that there's only so long where you can go through a strike. And then once you reach that agreement, it's a win on that end and that point in time for the laborer. But then somewhere down the line, that company will just lay people off. You know, they're going to get their profits either way, right? If I'm working a job, let's say I'm working a job and Joe is both working at UPS. We were both on the picket line and strike. We both had different years of tenure. Sometimes tenure doesn't even matter, right? Let's not, the tenure doesn't matter. You know, we both got our deals. We both got an increased salary back in 2023 for working for UPS. And then you turn around now. And so I'm being laid off for UPS, but Joe is still on, right? It's almost like a randomized cost-cutting measure. They're going to cut costs at some point in time, either on a specific date or either by cutting a certain amount of people. And so, with the Boeing layoffs, they say they're going to bring people back or have people on a temporary furlough. And that's fine. And hopefully you can only hope for the best. But ultimately, don't be surprised if Boeing, and I'm just looking at a picture from the Seattle Times, just all these people on strike against Boeing, how many people can I count? Or how many picket signs can I count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And some of these people may be family members of the people that work at Boeing, but out of these 10 or 12 people I see just in this, looking at this image on my phone, right, who once the storm subsides for Boeing, a few months later, will all these people in the picture be left? Will they lay off some of these people in this picture? And that's the unsettling thing, where you work so long for a company, you work so hard with a company, and when they're not making a profit, when they're not doing something, or when the economic times place them in the chokehold, they have no choice but to cut back and descale as well. And it's especially alarming with tech. I mean, I know someone who worked at, did he say one of my boys worked at Google, or it was some tech last year, and thought he wasn't gonna make it or have to really take out debt, do X, Y, and Z. But thankfully, he was able to rebound this year. And so you just have to be careful because, especially in tech, where there are so many advances in technology through the use of this AI, which is booming, you gotta be careful in terms of what your role is. How key are you in your workplace? So I got 2 additional points here in terms of what to do before and after a layoff. Now, when you get laid off, again, like I said earlier, you don't want that dreaded letter, email, or phone call. It could come a month before, a week before, a day before, right? Some type of advance notice, or maybe it may not have an advance notice from your employer that you are being laid off. And obviously, there's a lot of reactionary things that you do after, but it's just as important to plan before a layoff. Cross your fingers and hopefully it doesn't happen, but there's a lot of planning before. So what I would suggest is that, as a new hire, you ensure you maximize your learning potential to learn all of the skills required. So these are the steps before. And those skills required could come handy down the line for a different position or for a different employer. Also, of course, before you even apply for the job, right, you want to make sure that the position is temporary, full-time, or on a contractual basis. If you are just starting, if you're transitioning into a job, make sure you have an emergency fund. If you're just starting out, those first few checks, make sure you don't blow each paycheck, right? Make sure you get your arrears in order, but you want to have some money on the side for an emergency. And health, car breakdown, being laid off is an emergency that you can add on that list. Ensure that you just take those preventative measures to protect yourself. Whatever job you're in, make sure you count up your monthly FUST, F-U-S-T. Did an episode about this a few episodes back. FUST, food, utilities, shelter, transportation. Count that monthly total and have that saved somewhere to protect yourself. You want to have at least 1, but preferably 3 months saved up to cover your needs. And to cover your needs during a layoff period, because it could take 60, 90, or 120 days, which is 2 months, 3 months, or 4 months. Or it could take 30, 60, 90, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months for you to rebound and get another job. If you're really in the bind, try to aim for 2, maybe 1.5. You just have to cut back. But something else you have to do is pay attention to your company, the website, the news, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, Fox Business. Depending on the job, pay attention to the news regarding the job you're employed at. Has a crime occurred that affected the company? Or has crimes occurred recently that affected the company? Have they reported significant profits and or losses during its last earnings call? Is the company downsizing in other areas of the world? You want to become attuned to the business and financial aspects of the company that you work for. You got Lululemon closing stores. It's rare that you see an Apple store closing stores, but me and my boy were just trying to hit up Buffalo Wild Wings last Friday, and the Buffalo Wild Wings in Navy Yard was shut down 2 weeks ago. So there's only 2 options, close options for Buffalo Wild Wings: the one on Route 1 up in College Park, and then the one over in Crystal City. But and sometimes this stuff, especially in the restaurant service, that can come out of nowhere. People the store can close overnight via health violation or otherwise, right? That can really come out of nowhere. I'd say if you work in the restaurant industry, maybe pay attention to the Google or Yelp reviews about that particular location. You know, a lot of people complaining or what's going on, and the crime in the area. Because the Lululemons in D.C., not the one in Georgetown, but, you know, you got these Gucci or wherever else, these crimes, CVS. You know, pay attention to the crime and what's going on in the neighborhood. Because organized retail crime is forcing these companies out, a lot of these retail companies. And granted, you won't see organized retail crime. Well, you will see organized retail crime if someone tries to steal display models from the Apple store, like phones and stuff like that. But in general, these companies, UPS and Boeing, it'll be on a grander scale in terms of layoff. They may have just hired too many people. There's not enough profitability coming in. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. Now, after you get laid off, if you are in the church, you know, find your church circle. Definitely just pray over it. Just don't be too downtrodden about it. You know, pick yourself back up. Make sure you pick up a side job, part-time gig, drive for Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Instacart. If you're unable to find this side work, go ahead and file for that unemployment. Pare down your monthly spending only to your needs. Again, practice that FUST, food, utilities, shelter, transportation. Because it ain't no movies, no shopping, no going out to eat when you laid off, or else you starting to swipe credit cards and getting into that debt. But this is also a time to reflect and work on your resume. What are you good at? Do some deep diving as to the skills you're very good at. You may be able to find someone in your professional circle who can help develop your resume. Also search for jobs using Monster, Indeed, Ladders, LinkedIn, and etc. So that's what you do before and after a layoff. I added a middle one in there, during, but I was like, during doesn't make sense. I mean, during is part of the before, right? I mean, you know, once you kind of see things on the news or what's going on, like, for example, like, again, looking at this article in Boeing, right? This article came out September 16th, 8 days ago. I'm recording this on Tuesday, September 24th. It came out 8 days ago. You got people on strike. Someone may be on the picket line right now doing the strike. Or let's say somebody is working for Boeing and they're just sitting behind a computer and they see that people are on strike and they looked at this and they're like, my company's going, it's pretty crazy out there. Hey, coworker Joe, I mean, you see what's going on over here with these layoffs? Oh man, I hope it doesn't affect me or my whole livelihood, right? So you know, once you start to hear this type of news, that monkey starts to creep on your back, that shadow on your shoulder, where it's like, what's going on? What's happening? What will be the outcome of this? Now, granted, everybody's not going to be focusing on that. It's a whole bunch of employees, right? UPS has over 500,000 employees. So everybody not focused on that. You know, a lot of these, majority of them UPS employees is drivers, and they out on the roads and they just doing a job, right? And a lot of them, I'm sure, were doing their job in 2023 during the strikes, as they were still fighting for decent pay. But it's all about profit. You know, you see a lot of these YouTube channels, they talk about profit over people, gains over people. When you got UPS with a 32% year over year decline in their income and a 1.1% decline in total revenue, and on the other side, operating expenses are growing 3.1%. It's just the numbers. The numbers aren't numbering. The math isn't mathing. And it's what companies and businesses do. And it's unfortunate. Shout out to Orlando Minor on YouTube, because he's got daily videos. And this is part of he was one of the few sort of channels I looked at where I wanted to kind of touch this. Because again, granted, there's No Strings podcast. You want to have no emotional strings, no financial strings. And being laid off, that you automatically get a string attached to you, because your income comes, your retirement comes from your income, and your income comes from your place of work, a decent job. Side money is good for on a temporary basis, but you need that full-time job. And whenever you hear layoff, it's crazy. But definitely shout out to Orlando Minor. I mean, his videos are pretty interesting. So, all right, y'all. That's all I got. Again, be kind, rewind. If you want to the first part before the intermission, if you want to hear the sort of news-based articles, things that I just printed out and just wanted to round up on this episode of playoffs or layoffs. And like I mentioned again, like once you start applying for those jobs, it becomes a mad dash to the victor goes the spoils, and then you definitely had that playoff mentality where it's win or go home when you have your back against the wall, when you got children and kids to feed, and you got to put clothes on your back, and you got to keep on going after being laid off, right? You just keep, it's not, you can't be laid off for like a certain amount of time. Hopefully for anybody I pray that nobody gets laid off, and you just can't be without work in this crazy economy for such a long time. I can't even imagine it because I can't wrap my head around it because I never experienced it. But, 3 months max. But I know some people have been laid off for way longer than that. And hats off and kudos to you. But just a heads up to all of y'all, really just listening to it wherever you work, hospitality, restaurant, tech, right, aviation, engineering. The layouts are real, right? Dell making the computers. I'm recording this from a MacBook, but we know Apple. I mean, I'm sure I can probably Google Apple layoffs, and they got some layoffs, playoffs going on too. I mean, it's crazy out here, So August 28th, 2024, from Yahoo Finance, Apple was set to cut 100 jobs in its fourth round of layoffs for the company this year, specifically in its Apple News and Apple Book segments, according to Bloomberg reporting. So this is another example where you look at companies look at the different divisions where they don't see enough growth. I see that a lot with WWE because they merged with TKO. WWE Wrestling, they merged with TKO and they do business with UFC. Where it's like when you have a merger with WWE and UFC, and you got these two different companies or social media teams for two different companies, you might as well just merge the two, and then you downsize by laying people off. And again, it's unfortunate. That's what happens with acquisitions or X, Y, and Z. But again, you see the patterns where Apple, like I mentioned, they're set to cut 100 jobs in this fourth round of layoffs. Dell continued job cuts through the end of the year. So again, these different tactics. Slowly, you're not doing one mass 20,000 people in March, and that's it. They're doing these different slow rounds, and I'm sure they got people behind the scenes looking at which departments are more productive, which employees are more productive. So it sucks because it's almost like you have like a knife to your back, and you got to keep your head on a swivel and make sure you're doing everything in your job. So I'm telling you, IBM, IT, it's crazy. Look at this. Los Angeles Times, Paramount starts second phase of its planned layoffs. So we know about Paramount, the movie studio. They got movies and they got Paramount Plus, Paramount Network, right? And Paramount, this after Tuesday's cuts, 90% of Paramount Global's planned layoffs of 2,000 workers will be complete. And they're going through three different phases. So, it could be. Oh, let me see. Hinton Ellison, who's set to become Paramount CEO after the deal closes, said he intends to involve the legacy Hollywood institution into a media and technology company. Part of that plan includes improving the ad engine and algorithmic capabilities of company Paramount Plus streaming service using artificial intelligence. See, there it goes. Tools to enhance creativity and drive production efficiencies. So they're probably going to lay off some of the Paramount Plus team that works on the back end development and maintaining the system to rely more on AI. So that's just an example of how This is how life is, lady. I mean, it sucks. Apple News, Apple Books. I don't use Apple News that much. Apple Books, I don't really use that much. But again, Apple, that's like low hanging fruit on the cherry tree to Apple, and doing those layoffs to cut within those specific divisions because they probably aren't as profitable or as engaging. So yeah, so it's a lot. It's all across the board, y'all. And hey, I'm sure I'll do another episode similar to this. And again, this was a little bit, of course, emergency fund and budget and X, Y, and Z, because always that's just key and it's important wherever you work at. But not afraid to pull out the news lens, right? Because you want to live a no strings lifestyle and with no stress and no worry. And being laid off destroys that, can really damage your psyche, and you're supposed to have a bend but don't break mentality, but being laid off can really break your spirit. So I pray that nobody gets laid off, and hopefully you had fun listening to this episode, podcast episode 55, Playoffs, Layoffs. Recorded on a random Tuesday while it's raining, out here chilling. But let me go ahead and get this edited and posted on here. So thank y'all for listening to the pod. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace. Oh, just a last piece. I knew I had another article about Amazon, but this is from TechCrunch. Amazon CEO Andy Jassy is calling for a full return to the office at the start of 2025. For the last 15 months, employees have been expected to work in the office 3 days per week. Now employees will be expected to be in the office 5 days per week, with work from home being okay only in extenuating circumstances. Big tech executives have championed return to office mandates, but they have proven unpopular among some tech workers. And what does that mean? This quick little minute and a half tidbit. It means that they want everybody back in the office, back to an engaging environment, how it was post-pandemic. There's going to be some people who their schedules may not afford for that, and they may just let you go and lay you off if you're unable to do that. I'm sure, again, like they mentioned, in certain circumstances, they will still allow it. But again, that's another little tactic in terms of layoff tactic, right? If you're working from home and you refuse to come back to work, they'll probably just lay you off. This is news, y'all. Like, it's crazy, but All right, cool. That's all I got. This is actually the end. If you made it this far, this is actually the end. But no, it's So September 21st, 2024, TechCrunch article titled "Amazon Says No to Remote Work." Right. Don't be surprised if Amazon does additional layoffs this year or the beginning of next year as a result of their the transition back into in-person workforce development. All right, y'all. That's it. I'm done. All right, that's it. I'm done. Cut me off. Peace. Bye. Thank you for listening to the No Strings Podcast with Rel Simon.